It's February 1945, Ferdafjord, Norway. 41 aircraft still flying together. They should not still be together. 41 aircraft in a corridor 40 feet wide. No shadow on the water. Cloud flat from wall to wall. Stan Butler, 24 years old. Back of the pack, both hands wrapped tight around the control column. Cold air bleeds through the cockpit seam. Canopy frame rattling against the slipstream. Norway pushing up through the haze dead ahead. 10 minutes to target. Rock walls sharpening out of the murk off the nose. 41 aircraft compressing toward the fjord entrance. Butler holds position tight behind the Beaufighter ahead. Its tail fills everything beyond the glass. Nichols leans over the navigation board.
5 minutes margin if we stay clean.
Butler keeps both eyes on the gap ahead. Cliffs rising either side as the entrance narrows. The fjord swallows them one by one. Stone walls closing on both sides. Flak ships sitting somewhere inside, still quiet. One question hanging in the cockpit: when do they fire? 41 aircraft cross into the fjord mouth. Rock walls climb either side of the water, sky narrowing to a gray strip above them. Butler bleeds off altitude, skims the surface. Ahead, the Beaufighter dips low into the channel. The navigator steadies one hand flat against the panel edge. Snow packed hard into ledges high above the waterline. Bjordal village along the southern cliff line. The ships must be near it. Engine noise bounces back off stone. 4 minutes left. Water opens slightly toward the target position. Butler scans the channel for a hull. Open water where Z3 should be sitting. Formation holds course forward anyway. The navigator drags his gaze across the whole waterline.
Nothing in the open water.
Butler keeps his hands flat on the controls. Don't react yet. Ahead, the Beaufighter holds course toward the bend. Cliffs deepening along the southern edge. Movement below the rock face. Black tears open along the southern cliff edge. Black bursts ripping through the airspace 20 yards ahead. Hidden guns firing upward from beneath the cliff shadow. Point-blank range. Smoke expanding in rings across the whole corridor. Formation blows apart under the first salvo. Butler wrenches both hands left. Aircraft kicks hard across the channel. Z3 tight against the rock wall. 3 minutes left. Butler forces the aircraft level, both hands locked on the column. The navigator drives one shoulder into the radio housing. Impacts shake through the cockpit frame from somewhere close, smoke drifting up through the broken formation ahead. Each aircraft running its own line now. Rock walls pressing in on both sides. 2 minutes left on a window that no longer exists. Butler holds the aircraft straight over the water rock walls either side. The turn ahead he can follow, or he can break and lose the formation. Lead aircraft tips into a turn inside the corridor. Wings cut sharply against the confined walls. Entire formation compresses into the bend behind them. Speed bleeds off. Aircraft bank hard. Butler follows the plane ahead into the turn. Rock walls crowd both wingtips. Radius tightening. The navigator lifts his head from the map board.
Turn costs the window.
Butler chose to follow flak still punching up from the ship positions below. Formation out of the 180. Facing the target aircraft leveling unevenly across the channel. Speed 30 knots below where it needs to be. Butler holds alignment with what's left of the group. Beaufighter ahead slides left, drifting out of position. Flak ships walking rounds across the scattered formation. Now,
all aircraft hold course. We press.
Butler's hands tighten on the column. 1 minute left. Of what? He doesn't know. Butler drives the aircraft steady over the water. Eyes locked forward. The navigator makes a small adjustment to the board. Fuel red is wrong. Engines at reduced speed, aircraft heavy in the air. Dark shapes appearing high above the fjord rim. Cliff face dark, direct light not reaching the channel floor. 12 of them dropping fast. Focke-Wulf 190's dropping into the fjord from altitude. Butler picks up one shape, descending. Not behind the group, behind him. Fighter locked on his position, closing fast. Aircraft ahead pulls away hard under pressure. The navigator swings his head toward the rear.
Fighter directly behind us.
German pilot holds the dive angle, nose down, not wavering. Distance collapsing, first cannon burst opens below the tail. Tracer rounds streaming past both sides of the fuselage. Butler kicks the aircraft lower, forces it down toward the water surface. Fjord surface flashing past the wingtips, 6 feet either side of rock. Flak still rising from below the cliffs. Beaufighter ahead banks hard right, clearing the space. Fighter not pulling off, holding position, tightening the angle. The navigator braces both arms hard against the cockpit frame. Rock wall passing 6 feet to the left. Nowhere to go. Water below, fighter above. Rounds hit the aircraft's skin. 3, fast, close together. Metal screams through the cockpit frame on the first impact. Beaufighter shuddering through the second and third. Butler clamps both hands harder on the controls. Don't let the nose drop. The navigator flinches back hard against the rear bulkhead. A shell punches clean through the lower cockpit floor, round passing inside the aircraft, inches from Butler's right boot. Fragments scattering across the floor plates. Cold air drives hard through the split into the cockpit skin. Fighter still locked on behind them. Butler keeps both hands flat. Fighter still out there. Focke-Wulf closing the last 50 yards. Nose locked on the Beaufighter's tail, not shifting another burst. Rounds cut through the fuselage, into the wing root. Butler banks slightly left. The minimum movement the walls allow. Aircraft trapped in the corridor, nowhere to break to. The navigator drives both hands into the panel edge. Fighter adjusting to follow the bank. Back on the line in 2 seconds, next burst already building in the nose. Heavy round punching into the fuel tank section. Impact drives through the aircraft body. A different sound, deeper. Round lodges inside the tank. Does not detonate. Fuel pressure holding around the shell casing. For now, Butler keeps the aircraft absolutely flat over the water. Any pitch could shift the round controls, responding slower. Something bent in the linkage below his feet. The navigator turns toward the damage without being asked. Fighter still in the rear quarter, circling for another pass. Butler pushes the nose down 2 degrees. Holds it unexploded shell sitting in a full fuel tank 100 miles from base. Focke-Wulf breaks upward. A Mustang cuts across from the right, another aircraft crossing between them. The space filling with crossing lines. Mustangs engaging the fighters above the fjord. Now tracers cutting high. Butler holds course through the gap, eyes fixed on the exit ahead. Beaufighter dropping lower toward the water off to the left. Flak still rising from the ships below. Fighter circling back toward Butler's position. Hasn't given up. Fighter still visible in the rear quarter. Rock walls still pressing in on both sides. Butler locks both eyes on the fjord exit. Does not look anywhere else. Butler steadies the aircraft after the last exchange, the navigator working along the instrument panel. Fjord exit showing faintly through the glass. A mile, maybe less. Formation scattered across the channel behind them. Fighter still working above 100 miles of open sea. On the other side of that exit, Butler keeps the nose pointed at the gap. He does not turn back. Fjord opening toward the outer sea. Butler drives hard toward the gap. Altitude bleeding for speed. Speed coming back. Channel widening off the nose. Engines responding. Fighters still active behind the scattered formation. Flak burst falling short. Distance building behind them. Water stretching wider off the nose. Open sea closed now. The navigator keeps his eyes on the gauges, not the window fighter. Presence thinning. Mustangs pushing them north. Aircraft clearing the fjord into open sea. Butler holds low wave surface visible through the lower panels. Fuel reading wrong. Holding steady, the navigator scanning the rear quarter. Fighters gone. Formation broken across the sea behind them. Individuals, not a wing. No shadow on the water. Cloud flat from wall to wall. 100 miles to base. Round still in the tank. The navigator holds on the fuel gauge. Aircraft pushing through cold air, 1 mile at a time. Engine steady, canopy seam still bleeding cold air across his left shoulder. Same as when they left. Shell has not moved. Beaufighter crossing open sea. Both engines turning. Butler's hands on the column. The navigator's eyes on the gauge needle resting against the peg. Still in the tank.